there's a death camp in Helmo, Poland, and their method of killing people at mass was to put them in gas vans, which were essentially buses. And they would pack everyone in, men, women, and children, tell them that they were, being relocated. And then once they were crammed into these buses, they would hook up the exhaust into the back and they would just drive. And they killed everybody in like 30 minutes on a drive to the forest.
So, in today's episode, I will be sitting down with a good friend of mine by the name of Jules. Now, this man happens to be one of those individuals who I have more conversations with behind closed doors about these same things that I speak on day in, day out. And one of the subjects that has come up as of recent is of the Holocaust and how there is not only now a culture, but a all-out generation that is buying into the lies that either it did not happen or it wasn't as bad as what was claimed to be. Now, unfortunately, we live in the day and age of utter delusion and disinformation. And so, in the midst of all that, I believe it is our job to essentially bring to light those things that are oftentimes denied. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, I want to introduce you guys to, I think, besides my girl and my parents, you're probably like the third most frequented person in my call logs right now. So, this is my boy, Jules, aka the man who introduced me to tequila. Some of y'all folks will know the moments when I started talking about that. That's this guy right here. So, welcome to the show, Jules.
Thanks for having me, Tinashe. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. So, we're going to get right into it. You and I have a multitude of conversations about just about everything taking place, not just politically, but socially, historically, etc. And something that, I mean, I'm somebody who will delve into hours worth of content, and it feels like even though everybody is an expert in something and you don't claim to be, you've told me things about the realities of the Holocaust that I've never heard from anybody before, right? And it's not for a lack of trying. Like real life stories and, even family history and things of that nature that really solidified some things for me. And the reason this really hit home is because, we live in a world where my generation is starting to, at scale, believe that the Holocaust, some of them believe it never even happened, right? It's like it's bad enough to say, well, it wasn't as bad as they projected to be. But now there's folks who are saying the entire thing was made up. And so I felt it was necessary to have you on and to, delve into this conversation. So, first question I'm gonna ask you is almost playing the devil's advocate because you would have to is, why do you think there is this narrative that the Holocaust didn't happen or that it wasn't that bad?
Well, first, I would start off by saying my level of expertise would be more like being the fly on the wall as an observer in terms of research, uh, in terms of firsthand testimony from, my grandma and people like this. Uh, but I would also preface that atrocities and genocides around the world shouldn't be discredited ever. I'm not saying that the Holocaust is special or unique in the
Mm,
sense of importance. Darfur, tragedy,
yeah.
Sudan, tragedy, Nigeria, tragedy, Cambodia, tragedy,
Mm,
Mao, tragedy, Stalin,
mhm,
tragedy. So it's not a one is superior to the rest. But what I think is unique about the Holocaust specifically is the the effort to basically say it didn't happen.
mm,
And I find that to be very concerning, um, to the point where I felt like I had to speak up about it. In years past, you just you it. I think with social media, how it's been amplified so much to a point of you can't avoid it,
yeah.
and it kind of tears away at your soul. Um, so for me, it's very concerning and it's very sad. And the Nazis, what people don't realize is Nazis had collaborators.
Mm,
It wasn't just German people pulling triggers and committing mass genocide. They were enlisting locals, Latvians, Ukrainians. And I guess what's upsetting to me is the fact that there wasn't ever really justice served, ever,
mm,
in this case. So when I see people like Nick Fuentes, they'll say things like, "Oh, if you have this many cookies and you put them in ovens and then you grow," I'm sure you've seen these clips,
yeah,
right?
yeah. 6 million cookies. How
I
many
guess
ovens do you need?
yeah, yeah. And what I would do is I honestly want to rewind a little bit
Okay.
to just paint more of a picture of why I feel this way.
Okay.
Because when Kanye was going off on saying stuff, I was the one in my mind trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, saying, well, that's not really what he means. Or I don't know why, but there was something in me that was always going to like the defense of Nick Fuentes of, oh, he's just being hyperbolic, you know, uh, all this kind of stuff. I don't know why I did at the time, but looking back on it, I think I understand. And I think that's because men in general, especially men who don't have a horse in the race, they don't have
Yeah.
any Jewish lineage. There's no real history tied to an event, so why do you care as much? But I think
Yeah.
human nature always has a tendency to like the villain. Um,
Mm,
the human nature of men to be attracted to the villain, even women, I'd say, the saying, "Oh, we like the bad boy," right?
yeah.
Um, I think it's similar in that sense. And so, growing up, my grandma survived the Holocaust, and my mom was raised with a mother who dealt with that direct trauma.
Mm,
And so she made it known growing up that, oh, your grandma survived the Holocaust. And you don't really know much about it when you're, a kid, but you like World War II movies. And when you look at Nazis, they're always like the villain. They're the villain.
of
And
course.
but there's always this feeling within you that says, wow, that's cool. Like they're the bad guys. They have the cool uniforms. They're scary.
Mm,
And they had the coolest equipment. The older you get and the more you become a nerd on World War II, you're like, wow, they have they're the leaders in technology of the time. Like people don't know this, that the Germans were this close to having, fighter jets. They were this close to having nuclear weapons. So it's they were very innovative at the time.
mm.
Hugo Boss designed their uniforms,
That's
so
insane.
everything looked cool about them.
Mm,
And because of that, you don't really recognize and you're kind of disconnected to what the truth is. You're getting your info from movies and your imagination.
yeah.
Um, so I think that part of me, that's why I would come to, by the way, never outward defense of like Kanye or all these people when they say things like this, but trying to understand where they're coming from more so. So when they say, Hitler was good, okay, well, they're cherry picking the fact that they were able to stabilize the German economy briefly. They were cherry picking the fact that they were able to galvanize unity amongst the nationalists. Um, cherry picking the fact that their technology was superior and advanced. And they're completely either have a blind spot or they're just not even attempting to look at the other side of the coin. And it is wildly disturbing.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, especially the last week or so, for whatever reason, I've been doing more research than I ever have done before in my life about the Holocaust and the tragedies that have happened. And it is it is one of those things where it's hard to sleep at night, honestly. You go to like, because I'm just glued to this. And what people don't realize is there's for all the Holocaust deniers who say it didn't happen, they don't realize that a lot of the evidence about the Holocaust comes from the perpetrators themselves admitting it.
Mm.
And and
Wow.
witnesses. You know, if you're dealing with concentration camps, people have like the Cliff Note version of what happened during World War II, right? It's like World War II is relegated to like a chapter and like sixth grade history.
I
And
was
it's
about to
like
say, yeah, this is 2.5 days in history class and it's over. That's all I got.
and it and it's always like Normandy,
Mm-hmm.
Holocaust, Hiroshima.
Check.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, and now you're an expert in World War II. So you're not really getting the full picture of what actually happened. And that's why you have people like I think like Nick Fuentes who will just relegate it down to cookies, you know, and
Mm,
ovens, and the math doesn't add up. And part of me feels like he's just doing that to be triggering.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? Like infuriating because you know it's people say that stuff online, and I understand like in a world that rewards what's it called clickbait. I
yeah.
understand why there'd be some traffic for things like that. It didn't affect me at the time. It's more just like you're detached, you don't know. But now I think it's at a point where I'm seeing it so frequent and I'm seeing such a divide all the time. A divide between Christians and Jews,
Mm,
a divide between Jews,
yeah.
a divide between truth is
Mm.
what and the ability to just rewrite history and just to change narratives upsetting.
It's insane to me because, like you said, early on when you're seeing the Kanye interviews or whatever, it's like, on one side, which I know is just part of who you are, you're always somebody who will ask the question, and you will look at it from both perspectives, which is a healthy and a beautiful thing. But it's almost like for me, I did think that the Nick Fuentes of the world, even the Kanyes, were just simply rage baiting, right? And to be fair, some of it may be exactly that, but it can't take away from the fact that there are real life consequences. It's like what led to the actual Nazi regime picking up momentum? It would have been subversive language. It would have been them pushing these ideas, but in subtle ways or whatever it is. And it's like now we're in a place where there's real Nazis. There's people who actually believe Hitler's a good guy.
Ultimately, that's exactly why I'm even doing this, is
Mm,
because you're right. It's gone way too far. Um, and it's not right. And you know, I've had an experience actually when I was in the Czech Republic. There was a concentration camp called Terezin, and this
mm.
place was very interesting. We weren't planning on going there, by the way. We just happened to stumble across it. And
Was it a Mossad trip? You didn't get paid 7,000 to visit that one or what?
I did. Yeah, I got
Oh,
7,000
that checks.
and that's another thing I don't understand. Because if that was a real job, I would be a billionaire. I would
Absolutely.
stop ev
We would.
I would stop everything, and I would be doing that all day long.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I don't even that whole, uh claim, the 7K, did someone just pull that out of a hat, this random number? Like, I don't understand. Like, was this generated by bots? I see it all the time everywhere, and it
Yeah.
blows my mind because we're all getting together thinking like, why aren't we getting paid?
Exactly.
Like,
Where's our money? Every single one of us are owed trillions of dollars at this point.
yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, folks, but people support Israel. That's
Imagine
just
that.
what it boils down to. People support
Mm.
Israel. You know, we live in a generation where you have bands at major festivals saying
Mhm.
death to the IDF.
Mhm.
Uh, you have uh, people saying that there's a genocide in Gaza, which is really these a lot of people who say this claim are people who don't even know anything about what's happening
Yeah.
at all, like at all. Um, and it's so normalized and so frequent, and we're at a generation. I think like to parallel it to entertainment, you know, when you're growing up, your parents will always say, "Oh, you don't know the good music," or "You don't know the good movies."
Yeah.
And it's a similar thing to where now, people just don't know history. They don't even they're so
Mm,
confused about everything. They think that they've been lied to so much that the result is they don't trust anyone, and that
exactly.
opens a door to just being completely vulnerable, and easy to be manipulated, and
Mhm,
easy to manipulate and be used. Useful idiots is what they
mhm.
say. So everyone wants to feel cool. It's all trending, right? Trend.
Yeah,
Um, but what it is a distortion of reality. And it's concerning. Um, so these are the Holocaust is unique in the sense that there is a real effort to cover up what actually happened. And versus, people don't deny the Russian gulags, they don't deny
mhm.
what Mao did, they don't deny what's happening in Sudan. And, by the way, in Darfur, for instance, I remember, growing up in Los Angeles when Darfur was, kind of like the trend, the hashtag, the same way it
Mhm,
was, Rafa is a hashtag.
mhm,
In Darfur, people were just saying it's a tragedy, and you would see people say, "Oh, the tragedy in Darfur, the tragedy in Darfur, the tragedy in Darfur, donate, help, the tragedy." But no one actually dove into what was happening
exactly.
and who the culprits were, which I found interesting, which were radical Islamists.
Usual
So
suspects?
so I don't, it's a similar in the sense of like no one wants to understand the full picture of what's happening. And if you think one way, you're accused of being Mossad, you're accused of being a CIA op,
Yeah,
and it's like people genuinely have a care and concern for what's happening in the world right now. And for me, I think that I had a real spiritual awakening 2 years ago. Um, Actually, longer than that. Actually, during October 7th is when I actually had that real core spiritual awakening. And I've kind of kept it internal to just, process it myself. What are my immediate priorities, my family?
mhm,
Um, but over time, and just being glued to the blogosphere, which is very addicting, as you know,
yeah,
scrolling YouTube, scrolling this stuff. Um, I couldn't escape it. I don't know if the algorithm was just feeding me hateful rhetoric all the time, but but it turns out everyone's being fed this hateful rhetoric all the
exactly.
time.
That's
It's not
right.
just me. And so it got me to a point where I'm just like, enough's enough. People don't know history, they don't wanna learn, and they don't wanna research. So, for any Catholic or any Christian that wants to jump to the defense of Hitler and say, like, "Well, he galvanized the people," for instance. "Well, they were great in innovation." How about the fact that they outlawed Christianity? How about that fact? Nothing
While
the guy
pretending to be
did.
Christians.
Well, they replaced the Bible in these churches with Mein
Yeah,
Kampf. It's like, this isn't I don't understand how you can claim to be a Christian and think remotely, uh, that people like Hitler or Stalin or the Bolsheviks were good people. These were all straight up atheists. That's what they
mhm,
were. So, it's frustrating as a Christian convert to now just see all the time, the splintering of the faith and just like the blatant, cherry picking of the most
mhm,
evil people of all time. I don't understand.
yeah.
I really don't understand.
Are you somebody who believes that this is organic? Do you think that this is just happening due to the time that we're in, the swinging of the pendulum, or do you think there's a concerted effort to put people in place and to make sure that there's some sense of disruption?
It's a good question. I think it's a combination of a lot of things, to be honest.
Okay.
I think that you have a combination of people with entirely different motives. I
Mm,
think that you have people that are just straight up anti-Semites.
mm,
I think you have people that are just straight up confused. I
mm,
think that you have people that have good intentions, but they don't know where to turn because they feel that they've been lied to so much, right? Over time on different issues in government, blah, 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 that they, they're conspiracy junkies, like that type.
Yep.
Um, but I do think that there is a degree of real coordination to do something specific in the nation. I think that destroying MAGA is a big part of it, to be honest. And it's a weird thing to say because, I want to keep the focus on the Holocaust. I want to keep the focus on, these atrocities and people just brush it aside like nothing happened or just move on. Um, but I think it's worth noting one of the things that was interesting about Trump to me, uh, when he won was the fact that he was able to galvanize Jews and Muslims.
Hmm.
And,
I never thought
and
about that.
that
Yeah.
and so when you had I'm pretty sure at his rallies he had imams come up, whether it
Mm,
be from Dearborn and there was a real it felt like there was a chance that peace can happen.
mm,
And you had a lot of Israeli Jews supporting Trump. And then now obviously October 7th happens. And right now I always hear Israel, 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 Israel all the time. And part of me just wonders, is the intention really to just destroy the MAGA movement? Um, I don't know if
What do you
that
think the
if that
incentive
if
would
that
be? Like, get into that, because what would be the incentive? And I do believe that these aren't two separate issues. We'll get back into, like, I want to get back into your visit to Czech Republic, etc., and some of the actual
yeah.
sites, but I believe it's connected because again, these are the very same people, like the same audience that is pushing the Holocaust never happened, 6 million cookies, and how many ovens does it take, are the same ones who are co-opting, you know, this new conservative. Like, it's like MAGA is the platform right now, or became the platform, right? For
Mhm.
anybody who is a Republican who is serious. I mean, yes, DeSantis had his guys, etc., but Trump did something that I feel like they couldn't do for decades, which is to get
He's one
everybody
of one,
together.
and
Exactly.
he's one of one. He's one of one, and that's what makes it so, interesting is because it's what's next.
Mm,
Like, do we fall right back into the wars? Do we fall right back into, all the hardship that we had? It's a really interesting thing, but I kind of been jumping around a little bit, but I wanted to let me just go back to Terezin really quick because
okay.
that's a unique place if you research this.
Hmm.
What made Terezin interesting is that it was part movie theaters, swimming pools, parks, and amusement, and part concentration camp. And essentially, it was like a movie studio for Nazi propaganda to say, we're not committing any atrocities here. Look,
Wow.
you see the slides. Look, you see the pool. Look, you see the theater. Everyone's happy. The Jews are just together because they want to be together. Parallel it to like Little Tokyo or Chinatown or Little Italy, New
Mm,
York. They just want to stay together, just in their communities. That's what this is. But then, of course, that's just not the case. They go back to barracks, and then you see the firing wall where people were killed, but that's just one small example. Like, to be honest, the people in Terezin were like the lucky ones in the Holocaust.
mm,
Uh, because what people don't realize is you have the systemic murder, gas chambers, and all the stuff that Nick Fuentes will allude to when it comes to like the gas chambers and things like this. That's the cliff notes of the Holocaust that people will go to. What people don't realize is what actually took place during Operation Barbarossa, which was the German invasion of Moscow and their whole plan to take over Russia, and what they did in the Balkans and Latvia and Lithuania, um, and Ukraine. And when it comes into like the Holocaust denial narrative, what I've noticed is in Germany during the Holocaust in Poland with these death camps, a lot of these numbers um, were recorded. I mean,
hmm.
their own documents explained all this. It was very, very,
You mean the
very itemized.
Nazis' own documents? They were
The not,
keeping score.
yeah, yeah, keep proudly. That's the thing. Proudly keeping score. It's like I'd say it's like Hamas,
Yep.
videotaping their attack. They're like, we did it, and there's no shame in it. So
Wow.
similarly, because the Germans viewed it as we're doing something great, or the Nazis viewed it as we're doing something good. We're saving Western civilization. So they documented this with pride,
Mm,
right? But the difference is, as the invasion started going on in towards Ukraine and Latvia and Lithuania, the 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 itemization of records was getting lost in conflict because there was an active war going on. And what people don't realize is, I think that was what's insanely troubling, is the fact that when people say 6 million Jews died, you could even argue and say, I don't know if that's correct. You could probably say it's even more than that. Um, because none of these things were documented. Because what people don't realize too, that I've uncovered, is there's a lot here to follow, but I'm only
mm,
talking specifically on this Holocaust issue. The
mm-hmm.
Germans made an attempt to make the Bolsheviks Jews, to make the communists Jews. And the communists were not good, and the Bolsheviks were not good. And they had their
Sure.
own terrible massacres throughout parts of Poland,
Mm-hmm.
Lithuania, Ukraine, all this. They were terrible, but they weren't Jews. That's a lie.
Wait, so
They
you're
were
telling
atheists.
me that Queen Candy, the Queen of Conspiracy, you're telling me that she may be incorrect in claiming that? Because that's where I didn't know who the Bolsheviks were until I heard her talk about them as Jews.
Yeah, because, okay, so it's like, it's so frustrating when you hear about Candace, because she's someone that, like, I used to love. You know what I mean? Like, I was
Yeah,
totally into her content, and then you're just kind of like,
yeah,
what the hell happened? Um, and there's always things that are left out. Like, you can look up people's lineage to being Jewish, and you can look up people's lineage to being Christian or Muslim or
mm,
whatever. But if they're not practicing, then what are you talking about?
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like, if you come from a lineage of ancestry of someone who's Jewish, but you've never practiced Judaism in your life, you don't know anything about Judaism, and you are self-proclaimed atheist, the Jews don't want you. And
mm,
that's kind of where it's like, I feel like the line has been kind of blurred with a lot of those figures in communism, right? Or the Karl Marx, coming from like a
yeah,
Jewish family, but they converted to Christianity or X, Y, and Z, right? And so it's not a representation of the Jewish people at large if you have a member who comes from a Jewish heritage who
yeah.
isn't practicing. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you were to look at the Islamist heritage, I would bet money that they're probably all practicing
I mean, it's like
versus,
technically
you know
to
what I mean?
be, yeah, to be an Islamist or to be Islamic means to actually be a practitioner, right? That's the irony in the whole entire Judaism thing is, okay, are you a Jew by ethnicity? Okay, great. However, you can be the antithesis of the faith and yet still be
Hmm.
considered in the same mold. Like we talk about, the
That, well,
Soros of the world and all these sorts of guys.
yeah, you nailed that, because, I'm trying to get my thoughts together because there's so much to cover and there's so much
Mm.
to say.
Oh, we got
And
time. Believe
it
me.
takes you in all different, yeah, it takes you in all different directions, because, that is a huge point in misrepresentation right there. And that kind of narrative, that the Bolsheviks were a bunch of Jews and the communists were a bunch of Jews, is not true. These people
Mm,
were not observing the Sabbath. Um, so it's like, to make that claim, to be honest, is exactly what the Germans did.
mm,
Um, because if you look at a country like Latvia,
mm,
at a point it was occupied, it was part of the Soviet Union. It was occupied by the Russians, and the Russians were not good. I mean, they've committed
mm.
their own atrocities to the Latvians, and the Latvians were very oppressed, and to the point where, and also another thing that's important in this is, people don't realize that Hitler and Stalin actually had an agreement. There was an actual pact with each other, but Hitler double crossed Stalin,
Wow.
and it was to divide up parts of the Balkans and whatnot. But when the Russians, the Soviet Union was in charge of Latvia, for instance, and they committed all these atrocities and persecutions. Uh, when Hitler double crossed Stalin and the Germans came into Latvia, the Germans were welcomed as liberators.
Hmm.
Like, thank you for coming here. And the nationalists put on propaganda that said that the Bolsheviks, your occupiers, were Jews. So
Uh,
what happened is you had a lot of nationalist Latvians who, had pride in their country, um, who wanted restitution on their occupiers. And and that's how propaganda can create murderers out of ordinary people. Um,
this is you use the word occupy, and I think immediately to Pallywood, right? I think of the Jews are occupying the so-called Palestinians. It's the same exact narrative.
I got the funny you say that. I was speaking with someone the other day who, is like many people who just say, "Oh, they need a two-state solution." This type
Yeah.
of, comment. In my mind, I'm like, okay, then why did they walk away from every two-state solution opportunity if it was really about two-state solution? And then they
Facts.
say, well, well, they don't even know that even happened. They just look and they just say, "Oh, well, I didn't know that. Are you sure? I'm just asking questions." And then they'll say something like, I'll say, you know, the Jews were there in the land forever, and they'll say, well, Muslims are there too. And I'd say the main difference is I'm pretty sure it's you can't be a practicing Jew in half the Middle East. So it's like there's really no way
Mm.
where for them to go. It's not like, it's not equal. Um, but anyways, for what
Well, they
that's
say
worth.
the I mean, yeah, well, you can get into that forever, but it's okay. So technically this is their homeland, even though Islam existed more than 700 years after Christianity, let alone Judaism, which is thousands of years older, but Islam
By the way,
was
by
yeah,
the way, Tinashe, for anybody listening that's wondering why we're jumping around, Holocaust, Eastern Front, Islam, Israel, they're all related. That's the
correct.
thing. It's like they're
Correct.
all related. And that's why it's like there's so much to say. I mean, you could spend weeks and weeks and weeks talking about the nuances of how this is all connected.
Mhm.
Um, but I think for your audience, it's worth knowing a lot of these things because, like I said, people just have the Cliff Note version of World War II or what
Correct.
actually took place, and that doesn't mean you're saying one atrocity is better than the other, or more significant. Like we already talked about Darfur and all these things, like no one or Mao or Stalin, no one's saying that those issues aren't important. I think that why this is important to discuss now is that there's an active effort to just deny
Mm,
it, just say it never happened.
exactly.
And that's why it's like, no, I feel like everyone should speak up that has some heritage that leads back to that. Um,
Absolutely.
because it was systemic, blatant murder. And people don't understand how graphic this actually was. I
Mhm.
mean, people only know about Auschwitz. They're not hearing
Yeah.
about Helmo, and Mauthausen and all the other Treblinka. I mean, these were places that were murdering hundreds of thousands of people at mass in gas chambers where if people want to, the Holocaust deniers of the world will say, oh, well, it didn't happen because, the sites aren't there. The Nazis blew up everything as they were losing the war. They wanted to conceal all the evidence. They planted
Mhm.
trees over mass graves, planted trees over where the gas chambers stood. But what they couldn't get rid of is the testimony of the locals who lived around the area. The
Mm.
local person who worked at a cafe when the drunk Germans would come in and hear their conversations. The locals who lived in a farm and they couldn't escape the stench the stench of death. They couldn't escape the ash that was landing on them. They knew what was everyone knew what was happening. That's the thing. It's like,
Mhm.
but do you think half of these Holocaust deniers care at all about
Of
their
course not.
testimony? It's a blatant doesn't matter. And and so, it was bothering me so much because I don't understand why people would just constantly say it's easy to say that, well, the math doesn't add up if you're only looking at, these death camps, but you're not factoring in the atrocities that happened when the Germans were advancing towards Russia. There were
Mhm.
units called Einsatzgruppen, and all they did, their entire purpose was to kill everyone in their way. Everyone that was considered to be an enemy of the Reich, starting with the Jews, right? You go in order,
Mhm.
was just to be killed by shootings, and mass graves. I mean, you're talking about like 30,000 people killed at Baba Yar in Ukraine in like 2 days. Men, women, children. You would hear, and then there's testimony of villagers who would just be like, "Yep, we just heard the machine gun fire. We just heard the execution all day long, just clockwork like a business." And these soldiers were just drunk and happy, and they would come back and celebrate it in the town. And I don't understand. It's very upsetting because the younger generation, Gen Z, doesn't care at all. They don't even know that this stuff happened. It's just America's the colonizer. America is terrible, and it's the Jews. Um, and honestly, Nick Fuentes said something that I saw. He said that the Arab world didn't care about um, America until Israel. And when I heard him say that, I was like, okay, well, then can you explain to me the Barbary pirates?
Hmm.
Because
Go ahead.
my understanding was the Marines were created, the U.S. Marines, to fight off jihadist pirates who
Huh.
looted everybody and made them convert to Islam. If they didn't, they were beheaded. And the American generals met with the enemy and they asked them, "Why are you doing this? Like, can we compromise?" And they basically said, "No, sorry." And then the Marines were formed to fight them. So
Wow.
to say that it's just an Israel thing is again a misrepresentation of the whole picture of the enemies that the Jewish people face, the enemies that America faces, and honestly the world. There's nothing good that's going to come out of this hatred at all.
Mhm.
And playing this blame game and blame shift everything. Um, it's about the individual. It's always about the individual. Individual responsibility is what it's about to me. And but everyone wants to throw everything as in the collective. You know what I mean? So
So I wanted to get back into and tie in what we've spoken of thus far about this idea, which you've broken it down to me, but I want you to share with the folks out there about MAGA being co-opted. Why does that mean anything? What is the significance of that? Like, what kind of formed that theory in your head?
what formed that theory is people saying online that Trump is controlled by Netanyahu.
Hmm.
And to me, that's not the case at all. I don't understand why the like why you can even suggest that. I mean,
Well, it's obviously
stability in
because
the
he pulled a chair out for Netanyahu, to be fair, right? I mean, forget
God
about the
forbid.
Crown Prince of Saudi having an entire parade for him and nobody says anything,
Mhm.
but, pulls a chair out for Bibi and
Well, yeah, and that's another thing. It's like the this obsession with Israel, Netanyahu. Now, especially with the stuff that's been, you know, uh, the stuff online that is the 10-second clips of what someone will say or a brief text exchange. None of these things ever paint a whole picture,
yeah.
ever. And yet people just take it as fact. Like I know
Mhm.
people that will just literally get their news from a 10-second reel, and that's it. That's all the research they need to do. It's lazy.
Yeah.
No one wants to do the research, and I understand because it's depressing, like, you asked me to talk about the Holocaust because we were discussing the fact that, we were just trying to understand why there's such an active effort to just deny it or brush it off the
Yeah.
rug, under the rug, and I understand why people don't wanna do this because it's dark. Why would you wanna spend
Mm,
your day looking at the worst shit in human history? Not necessarily appealing. You could go
yeah.
back to your routine, you could go back to your comfort, and just say, "Oh, this will never happen to me. This will never happen
Mm,
to our younger generation." And, so I understand why people choose to be lazy because it's good, it's comfortable to just not think about the whole thing,
yeah.
'cause we're all gonna die anyway. Um, but I unfortunately was one of the ones that I just kept asking, "Why is there this effort?" And it just led me down I went down the rabbit hole on the Holocaust, and I've just been spending hours and hours and hours not listening to actual firsthand testimony. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not just there was a story of a kid in Baba Yar, which was a huge mass grave in Ukraine, and what the Germans would do is they would kill the women and children together. So the women would hold their children to console them from crying, and they would shoot them together with like one bullet, and they would fall in together. And there's pictures of this because the Germans took pictures of this. They took evidence of it because in their mind, we were participating in the cleansing, the cleaning of the
Yeah.
Reich. So they were proud of it. Um, but there were stories of like a handful of survivors from this massacre. Like I think one, and it was a kid who was shot with his mother, and the bullet didn't hit him, and he played dead through the end of the night until he ran off and hid in the forest. And it's just endless stories like this all throughout Ukraine, all throughout Latvia, all throughout Lithuania. Uh, None of this stuff I ever hear in the Holocaust narrative at all. It's always about Poland. It's always about Auschwitz. It's always about, the movies, the Steven Spielberg stuff. And that
Mm,
stuff is not even acknowledged. And that's troubling. And then, it's there's a concentration or there's a death camp in Helmo, Poland, and their method of killing people at mass was to put them in gas vans, which were essentially buses. And they would pack everyone in, men, women, and children, tell them that they were, being relocated. And then once they were crammed into these buses, they would hook up the exhaust into the back and they would just drive. And they killed everybody in like 30 minutes on a drive to the forest. And, I think they were fitting like 100 people at a time in these buses, just over and over again, just driving buses, and they would die. The Jews who are selected to do the dirty work, you know what I mean? Remove the bodies, bury
yeah.
them. The Jews that they were, the bodies that they were removing were their relatives. They were all from the same towns. So people would be taking out bodies of like their nephew that was gassed, or their brother, or their mother, or their sister, or their daughter, and would have to bury them. And then, these vans were just filled with the stench and bile and human waste. And, you know, it really does stick with you because there was such a human disconnect from this
Yeah.
from the German side to just be complicit with this. And
Bro, I wanted to I
it's
wanted
even
to
hard to
get
talk.
deeper into I wanted to get deeper into that, Jules, because I'm thinking right now, okay, we hear the Holocaust, we hear, what happened to the Jews in World War II, but we don't think, okay, the reason why the Jews were being killed was simply because Hitler had an ideology that they were the problem. And so the entire machine was just to kill them off. Like, I don't think we can comprehend that level of depravity or evil.
Mhm.
I'm trying to wrap my mind because I'm like, what is the purpose? And I'm like, dude, the only purpose is to kill them off. That's it. There's nothing else there.
Becoming a parent, all of this impacts you completely
Mm,
different. Like, if you don't have a child, um, you know, it's you can kind of just, like, talk about it like we're talking about what's your favorite movie.
mhm,
But once you have a child, it impacts you in such a different way. So
hmm.
for me being a father now, and I look at these things and I hear the testimony from this German soldier, and the imagery just sticks with me about these kids babies drinking sewage water. There's no food, there's no nothing. They're butt naked in the cold, and their parents are dead because they were starved to death. All this, by the way, this was like the waiting area before execution.
This is in the
This
ghettos. Like you said, this isn't even in
yeah,
one of the camps. This is just in
yeah,
a neighborhood they threw them into.
yeah. And by the way, anybody watching this who, doesn't believe me, they should do their own research. Go look it up yourself. Watch, I'm telling you, anybody who is skeptical about any of it, please research it and do it yourself. You
Mm,
know, and it might impact you the way it impacted me, but it changes the way I view everything now because
yeah.
you had cameras that were smuggled into the Warsaw Ghetto and smuggled in. They weren't to try and capture what was happening.
Mhm.
And you had people in the ghetto, dead people everywhere, men, women, children, everywhere from starvation, typhus, all this stuff. There are 500,000 people crammed together, right? And they would have these mobile hearses, these people carrying wagons, just picking up dead bodies, just like every day, just see dead bodies every single day, men, women, children. Just take. This wasn't from a war. There wasn't fighting. This was just
Yeah.
oppression.
They're just slaughtering
And
them.
so just dehumanizing, slaughtering. And that's why I get so it upsets me when someone who I really looked up to, like Candace, would say something like, "Oh, an actual genocide."
Yeah.
Like just that comment alone
Yeah.
is it's like, how can you say that? And like I said before, a million times, I'll say it again, it's not discrediting all the other atrocities that have happened in the world. It's like it's not saying that. But what I am addressing is the fact that there's a real attempt to just act like it didn't happen, or it wasn't that
Mhm.
bad, or that it's just propaganda. Um, but then, there is footage available for people who actually want to look into this and what life was like in Warsaw, just Warsaw. You could find other stuff in Latvia. You could see the imagery of the mass graves. You could see the testimony from the people who actually pulled the trigger. So, um, as it related to Gaza, when I see, all this stuff of these kids so animated, begging for all this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
it was just such a bizarre, just yeah. I'll leave it at that. There's just something there's something inauthentic about it, really inauthentic
Yeah.
about it.
I mean, again, you talked about, starvation or the genocide in Darfur, etc. And you speak of Sudan. It's like you can see real pictures there all day long of what an
There's a documentary
emaciated
called
body looks like.
yeah, yeah, there's a documentary called The Devil Came on Horseback, and it was
Okay.
about what was going on in Darfur.
Mm.
I don't know if anybody's even watched it, but
I
these
know
were
at least half of my folks out there have not because nobody knows what that is. You said the what? The devil on horseback?
yeah, I think that's what it was called, The Devil Came on Horseback.
I think this might have been
And,
one you mentioned during one of our calls. I'm about to put
well,
that on
I
top.
saw I saw this, I watched this, and this was out of Darfur, and
Mm,
what it was were I think they were called the John Wadid or something like this, was an Islamic, like, camel farming group, and they had
mhm,
disputes over land where their camels can graze. And the way they figured out how they can solve where the disputes of where their camels should be allowed to graze is to just kill everyone else. We'll come together, we'll kill everyone else who's an infidel, and then our camels can graze. And it's about this documentary was I want to say he was a journalist who had permission from the UN to basically document this. And he was
mhm.
shocked at what was actually happening. And it's called The Devil Came on Horseback because these terrorists would come on horseback and butcher entire villages, kids, women, light them on fire in the most horrific ways. So, in California or in Los Angeles or in the Western Hemisphere where we're not seeing this kind of stuff, it's easy to just, again, get the cliff notes. Oh, the tragedy in Darfur,
Yeah,
the tragedy in Darfur. I guarantee if you asked anybody what actually happened, they wouldn't know. So we live in a
absolutely not.
age of just laziness. People don't wanna know.
Mm,
Yeah, and
yeah.
they don't care. And, so it's not saying that the Holocaust is more or less important, but there is a huge effort to just make sure that the claims that the Holocaust didn't happen are amplified. And that's why when you hear things like, "Oh, well, we're talking about a real genocide, an actual genocide," it stabs me to my core because it's like, have you not looked into this? Or are you
Well,
just
this will be the same so-called Christian individuals that are dead silent about Nigerian Christians being slaughtered, and then it takes for Nicki Minaj to come speak out. So it's like the discreditedness of these individuals is already written all over. If you're not willing to speak on behalf of those you claim to be a part of, then you're a liar in my eyes. Either you are severely misinformed or you are a propagandist. Like there's simply no other way.
yeah. I mean, it makes you want it like, exactly, I wish there was another way to say it. It hurts it stings even more when it comes out of someone's mouth you actually respected so much. Like,
Yes,
like,
exactly.
it's like, what? You feel, like, straight up betrayed. Um, these are all these people that were killed in the Holocaust are not, they weren't Bolsheviks. They weren't
Yeah,
Soviet soldiers committing atrocities. These were
right.
like the baker, this was the guy at the candy store, it was straight civilians.
Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace.
I've been up for hours, I've been up for days, yeah. Staring at the ceiling, I've been counting strays, yeah. I've been in my feelings, I've been out of mind. I've been getting visions of the other kind. Yeah, I've been up for weeks. I'm in the count of blessings over count of sheep. I can never be the type to limit when it comes to me. I used to be the pleaser for the people.